As is true of every region on Earth, geography influences the lifestyle of its human inhabitants. In our case, temperate rainforests with their spectacular red cedars, Douglas firs, Sitka spruce, and hemlocks beckon many to earn a living here, cutting down trees. Many communities on northern Vancouver Island owe their existence to the forestry industry. Campbell River is no exception. In earlier times, one didn't have to leave town for visible evidence of ambitious loggers. It began in the late 1800s when, unlike elsewhere in BC, the North Island attracted a timber rush, not a gold rush. 500-year-old trees were common, while some saw as many as 3,500 birthdays. Not surprisingly, logging became lucrative, feeding the building boom in large centers like Vancouver. Camp life created its own isolated culture of camaraderie, quarrels, fun, camp food, and crowded bunkhouses. This is an ERT camp near Campbell River. This one, Elk River Camp 8 near Echo Lake. The logger's day was long, and his pay only $3 a day, a portion of which was deducted for room and board. When it was time to relax and sleep, the bunkhouses had to do. Imagine the smells and the noise of 30 snoring men. Let's take a brief look now at the actual procedures of extracting and moving trees. Until the 1940s, loggers toiled in groups of 3. 2 would use the crosscut saw, the misery whip, and the third man was the bucker. These men didn't have to lift weights after work to strengthen their abs. Standing on springboards about 8 feet off the ground, a wedge would be cut into one side of the trunk, then the final cut was made in the opposite side. A healthy maintenance of saws with sharp teeth was essential to efficient logging and happy fallers. Clearly, the saw filer played an important role. The talented Oscar Hilgren carved these disgruntled workers holding a bent crosscut. As a faller and a filer himself, Oscar understood the need for precision in equipment and maintenance. By the 1940s, the chainsaw was replacing the crosscuts. Heavy and noisy, they weren't an immediate hit with fallers, though productivity increased and there was no turning back. Dick Burnett, centered here, developed a local model which he tested and refined at Brewster Lakes Camp 5. It was one thing to cut the trees down and quite another to transport them from forest floor to a mill. Initially, oxen and horses towed logs to the ocean, but in higher elevations, other procedures were needed. These included spar trees and steam donkeys. The high rigger's job was no easy feat. The tree needed to be cleared of branches and unnecessary height. A series of cables and pulleys were attached to the tree, and a steam donkey dragged the fallen logs to a gathering place. No, high rigging was not a job for the faint of heart. Mr. Dempsey, one such high rigger, was the first to be employed by the Mendixon Company on Hardwick Island. Another well-respected high rigger, David Aitken, is pictured here preparing for a climb. Other ways of moving cut timber and caterpillars could skid a log into place, but ultimately, timber had to be loaded onto rail cars, a dangerous procedure. This train trestle over Miller Creek was approximately 800 feet long. Platforms were extended into lakes and the estuary, allowing rail cars to unload timber directly into the water. The ERT train engine fuel tanks were located near the dumping grounds at the mouth of the Campbell River. The locomotive beside the tanks waits to be fueled. Trains became impractical at higher elevations, but by 1954, logging trucks were used locally. This Elk River Timber Company truck hauling timber past Strathcona Park Lodge on the upper Campbell Lake. Another one nears its destination as it crosses the logging bridge over the Campbell River, a familiar starting point for today's hikers of the Canyon View Trail. The Elk River Timber Company's booming grounds at the Campbell River estuary was handy to the ocean routes, where men like Fred Benson and Tony Marshall would work the logs with their boom boat, the Quinsam II. The Campbell River estuary, as it appeared in this 60-year-old photograph, is almost unrecognizable through a modern lens. Logging has evolved a lot too, with the introduction of helicopters, grapples, and self-loading barges. What does remain true, however, forestry continues to employ a large number of North Island residents.